Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to Ionized Water webinar series. And here we are in part 9, week 9 out of 12. We have rounded the corner and we're getting close to the finish line. Tonight, we're going to talk about the relationship between pH and antioxidants. And we're going to start with a little review. So just so that you remember who I am, I'm Dr. Peggy Parker. I am a naturopathic and European biological medicine physician. And one of the most important things I learned in my studies in European biological medicine was that if you can create a slight shift in the pH of blood, urine, and saliva, reduce oxidation on the cell membrane, and get more minerals into cells, a body could heal itself of anything. That includes all of these items, whether it starts in the brain or the eyes or the heart, no matter where it is in your body has the ability to heal itself. And what do all of those diseases and illnesses have in common? They are all organ and glandular systems, and they are all made from tissues, and tissues are made from cells, and cells multiply to make new daughter cells, and daughter cells are identical to the original cell. And here's a great picture of tissue and a close-up of how that tissue is made from groups of cells. Now, cells multiply to make daughter cells that are identical to the original cell in every possible way. So if a cell is unhealthy, it produces 2 unhealthy cells. And the more unhealthy a cell is, the more unhealthy the daughter cells are. I want you to remember that you have about 100 trillion cells in your body, and each and every one of them is bombarded by at least 10,000 free radicals every day, some from the inside of the cell and some from the outside of the cell. And when that happens, that nice semi-permeable fluid cell membrane that allows oxygen freely in, and it allows water to come in as necessary, and it allows carbon dioxide to flow out, that cell membrane begins to change, and it becomes thick and sticky like the fat on your vent fan. And that phospholipid bilayer begins to repel oxygen, and it begins to repel water, and it begins to trap carbon dioxide inside the cell. And when that happens, the entire cell can change right down to the DNA. It can actually interrupt all kinds of processes. Now, there are embedded in that phospholipid bilayer some proteins that are that comprise pumps and channels and receptor sites that are responsible for getting minerals into the cells, getting hormones into the cells, getting building blocks of all kinds into the cells. And when those proteins are damaged by free radicals, it makes a huge impact into the health of the cell. Because these processes, these receptor sites and channels and pumps are all act like a hand in glove kind of situation. So or a lock and a key maybe is a better example. So when these begin to be damaged and start changing shape, these proteins and minerals and building blocks of the cells can no longer fit properly, and so they're not getting adequate amounts into the cells. Now, I want you to remember that different cells have different lifespans, and so here's a few that are easy to impact. Epidermal skin cells last only 2 to 4 weeks, where liver cells last 500 days. And while that is a long time for a liver cell to last, you have to remember that there's a constant renewal. So every day, some liver cells are being replaced. And so at the end of 500 days of my water protocol, most people experience pretty dramatic results in their health because your liver truly is your lifeline. Here is where, when starting to drink ionized water, we get the biggest bang for our buck. This is where we really see huge changes because the small intestine cells only last 36 hours. And so if you're sharing water with someone for a couple of weeks, you can just see how many turnovers these small intestine cells would have. And since alkaline water has a very unique quality in that it passes through the stomach really quickly and directly into the small intestine, these small intestine cells get a really big impact of the antioxidants, and that allows them to be able to absorb the water and get it directly into the bloodstream and the lymphatic system. And I want you to remember that even healthy things like exercise create more free radicals. And here's a cutaway of the cell, and all those little red parts in the cell are mitochondria. And inside the mitochondria is where we produce energy. And so for every single molecule of energy, or ATP, that's created, we produce 2 pretty nasty free radicals in that process. Now, some of those free radicals are actually used by our body in different processes. They're used by our immune system to kill invaders and that kind of thing. But many of them are just bombarding the inside of the cell. In a perfect world, if these were all the free radicals that our body was exposed to, would have no problem creating enough glutathione and SOD to take care of all of that. But we don't live in a perfect world, and we're getting bombarded from the outside of our cell, on the outside of our cells as well. Remember, oxidation is the step that leads to dehydration, and dehydration helps to increase inflammation in the body. And this becomes a very vicious cycle. So here's just an illustration from my book, Turning Back the Hands of Time, that explains how the immune system works and how our immune system and why it creates free radicals. So the immune system, anytime there's an injury, particularly an injury or an illness, our immune system initiates an inflammatory response. And when that happens, the inflammation utilizes those free radicals, like the ones that we saw in the picture of when we were producing ATP. It uses those free radicals to destroy the microbial invaders, whether that's a virus or a bacteria or whatever. And when it's doing its job of destroying those microbial invaders, it creates some free radical damage to the cell, to the surrounding cell membranes, and that's oxidation. And the damage to the cell membranes in those cells surrounding the area impedes the flow of water into the cells, which results in dehydration. And when we have a dehydration of a cell, it concentrates acidic waste. And the more concentrated the acidic waste inside the cell, the more oxidative stress is increased. And oxidative stress leads to more inflammation. And so you just keep doing this cycle over and over and over again. So all we need to combat that is the perfect antioxidant. So we're going to talk a little bit about ionized water basics and how we get those perfect antioxidants. So remember, atoms are single units. In every atom, there are electrons that are in orbit around the nucleus of the cell, and in that nucleus are protons and neutrons, and they're exactly the same number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an entire atom. And that little number that's assigned to it, like oxygen, its periodic table number is 08. That tells you how many of those electrons, protons, and neutrons are. And so anything that has an even number has all paired electrons. But anything that has a negative number, like these other elements, has an odd number, means that there's an unpaired electron. That makes that atom less stable. So it's always going to be looking to bind with something else. Now, when that binding takes place, we get molecules. So here, because hydrogen is one of those atoms that only has one electron, so it's an odd number. So it's always looking to pair with something else. In nature, you would never see a single atom of hydrogen. There would always be at least two atoms of hydrogen bonded together. And so here we have a picture of H2. So here in this molecule is made out of two of the exact same atoms, but in the case of water, we have hydrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. So we've got two different or two dissimilar atoms making up a molecule. And here we go talking about our favorite subject, water. Here's a water molecule. And so a water molecule, we generally call it H2O, but it's actually HOH. And when we put water and electricity together, we come up with a whole array of things. We come up with ions, atoms, and molecules. So here, the picture of the ions. When electricity passed through the water and the molecules split, we got two ions. We got an OH negative ion and an H positive ion. But sometimes when the water passes and electricity come in contact with one another, we can actually get an atom of oxygen and a molecule of hydrogen. It all depends on where the electron is in orbit when the electricity passes through and makes the change. So I want you to remember that ions create the pH changes. So here, the more OH negative we have in the water, the more alkaline it is. And the more positively charged hydrogen we have in the water, the more acidic the water becomes. We're going to talk a little bit more about that a little later. And H2 creates the antioxidants. H2 is an antioxidant on its own, but when H2 comes in contact with platinum, it actually releases its electrons freely. And so we end up with a bunch of little free electrons and hydrogen in our water, creating antioxidants. Remember, a free radical is just any atom or molecule that has lost an electron. And an antioxidant is any substance that can donate an electron. And so you see here why free electrons are the perfect antioxidant. They can penetrate anything. They can mitigate any free radical. Now, we all know, unless you've been living under a rock for a very long time, you know that there are all kinds of foods that have antioxidants in them. And generally speaking, the brighter the color, the higher the antioxidant potential. So here you can see all these beautiful foods that contain high levels of antioxidants. However, traditional antioxidants like vitamins A, C, and E are very tissue specific. So vitamin A cannot treat the same kinds of issues that vitamin E or vitamin C can. Same with vitamin E and vitamin C. And traditional antioxidants in supplements and even foods have a few serious drawbacks. Only about 25% of the antioxidants in your food or supplements can actually be utilized by your body. And in high doses, fat-soluble antioxidant vitamins like A and E actually become toxic to your liver. And they all add oxidative stress levels to your body, because in doing the very thing they were setting out to do, which is be an antioxidant, by donating an electron, they become a weak free radical themselves. Now, that's not to say that we should not eat those foods, drink those drinks. They're all really healthy for us for a multitude of reasons. And they're actually quenching some very seriously bad free radicals, and they become a very weak free radical. Now, the downside of that is that it's not stopping oxidation. It's only kind of slowing it down because it's still adding to the oxidative stress in the body. So we just need to find that perfect antioxidant. Now, we went on to talk about dehydration and all of the terrible things that dehydration creates in the body. And we talked about the fact that 75% of your body's weight is due to water. And when we lose water routinely when we breathe or talk, when we sweat, when we urinate or have bowel movement, we're losing water. And as oxidation increases, hydration decreases, because just like I showed you in the pictures of the cell membrane, as those cell membranes become oxidized and that fat in the cell membrane becomes thick and sticky, like that fat on your vent fan in your kitchen, it starts to repel some of the water. So you're not getting an adequately hydrated cell. So as you can see, As oxidation increases, the level of hydration in the body decreases. But antioxidants are the key to making that necessary shift in hydration. So the more antioxidants that we get in our bodies, and the more we repel those cell membranes, the more hydrated a body can become. And the way to make more antioxidants is to use more electricity to split more hydrogen, more H2O, into OH negative, H positive, and more importantly, into hydrogen gas. And that allows us to create both an antioxidant from the hydrogen gas and to create some free electrons as it's exposed to more platinum. Now remember, it's essential to remove excess calcium, because while this isn't a picture of the plates in your machine, it's a picture of a heating element. It's ionizing because there's electricity coming out from that heating element. It's ionizing to a certain degree the water, and it's causing that ionized calcium to stick to the heating elements in the same way that the ionized calcium will stick to the plates in your machine. And other chemicals also act like insulators. There's lots of drugs that will impede the flow of electricity through the water. So it's very important to learn the facts. And you can see that I've added to this from some previous presentations. So everything that's capitalized is something that I added, because I've had a lot more questions about competitors' machines. And so we're going to talk about that as it comes up and is related to our topic. So the one thing that I want you to remember is that, unfortunately, not all water ionizers are created equal. Now, if you saw the post that Amanda did yesterday, she was here in Spokane and picked up more than a dozen different water ionizers that I have tested. And I just didn't really have any use for them anymore. So she wanted to take them off my hands, so she came and picked them up. But here's what I want you to know that came about as a part of that testing, is that inferior plates do not create adequate antioxidants. There's a lot of reasons for that. The inferior plates will never be equal to what a Enagic has in its units. The pH numbers also fluctuate pretty radically. And we'll get to the reason why a little later. And negative ORP numbers are artificially high, not because of OH negative, but because of added minerals. And we'll get to why that happens a little later too. When testing people on more than 20 ionizers, the test results were either negligible or inconclusive. In fact, the first ionizer that I tried was the precursor to the Akai machine. And that was because my professor, Dr. Rao, in my biological medicine courses, really believed in ionized water. And he told us all to buy that Akai machine. So I did. And I got my patients to try it. They hated the water. It tasted terrible. And we weren't getting any test results. So all of us just gave up on it and started drinking RO water. Bad idea. Not so bad to give up on that unit, but bad to drink the RO water. Since other units rely on plate reversal charges, like similar, when your machine says it's in a cleaning cycle, that's because it's reversing the charges on the plates, and that's supposed to discharge some of the chemicals that have, the calcium and other minerals that have stuck to your plates. Their unit, because that's what they're relying on to clean their units, and they're really proud of the fact that it does a continuous cleaning, that it happens all the time, that it happens frequently, blah, 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 blah. Their units are generally not able to be properly cleaned to maintain the plates. They don't have any way to use a cleaning cartridge. They don't have any way to keep their machines clean. And this becomes really problematic in about 75% of the United States has excess calcium in the water. Now, not all manufacturers are equal either. Most of those Korean units that have flooded the market are, at least parts of them, are put together at kitchen tables, not in clean rooms. This is not appropriate. It's truly not appropriate for producing great results in the actual assembly of a machine. All the pieces and parts are being manufactured in manufacturing facilities, but they're just assembling them in inadequate surroundings, so you're not getting good soldering of parts to other parts. That's why so many of them fail just within just a few days out of the box. But you don't really know it unless you know how to test all the time. So I also want you to be aware of the ingredients in the pills and the liquids and the bubblers and all that are being put out. So while hydrogen, H2, is an essential piece to the antioxidant puzzle of ionized water, it's just one of the pieces. And H2 bubblers do add H2 to water, but they're using reverse osmosis or distilled water. And so there's no other reaction going on besides bubbling that H2 in. And then they're trying to get you to put it in a stainless steel container because that will hold the H2 longer, and the interaction between the H2 and the stainless steel is said to produce more H2. I do not consider this to be the best way to get hydrogen gas into your body. I don't think that RO water is a great source. I don't think that the totally demineralized water is completely inadequate as a regular drinking water. It actually causes problems, and it should never be consumed for more than 2 weeks at a time as a part of a detoxification of heavy metals. So the fact that they're using distilled or reverse osmosis water is not appropriate in my my research or my opinions. And I don't think that, like I said, I don't think that just H2 is the total solution to all of the problems. I think it's a big piece. It's not everything, because this H2 water is not addressing hydration. So in the pills, they're using magnesium chloride as the main ingredient to produce H2 in the water. And so I want you to know that magnesium chloride is also the main ingredient in ice melt. It is the lowest form of magnesium that you can consume possible. So I don't consider it to be a very good supplement. So if you are interested in learning how to test units that are popular in your own area using your own tap water so that you would have the information you need to talk to potential customers that say, well, what about this, or what about that, or what about this video that so-and-so has out on the internet, and he's from the town really close by. I want you to have your own information so that you can talk to those people intelligently. You can show them actual information from your own water. And so I'm putting together a webinar to teach you how to test units, and we'll do that within the next few weeks. So here's what you'll need so you have time to get prepared. You're going to need another unit to test. Whatever unit is popular in your area, see if you can borrow one from someone to test it. And you'll need about 2 hours of uninterrupted time. And you're going to need some pH drops, which you probably already have. You're going to need an ORP meter. And it's great if you can get some H2 drops. They're pretty easy to come by these days. If you have any questions about where to get that, I think, does Amanda carry the H2 drops on her website? Do you know, Heather? If she doesn't, I'm sure we can.
I don't know if she carries them on the website.
If she doesn't, we'll see where it's easy to get some, okay?
Okay.
So anybody that's interested in doing this webinar, if you could email me, that would be great. Just send me a short email that says, yes, I'm interested. That way I can make sure that I specifically reach out to you via email when we have scheduled the webinar. Anyway, I want you to be prepared so that you can answer all those questions. We do not want people wasting their money or getting negative health results because they've chosen the wrong unit. So let's talk about, for a second, we'll review why pH matters, and then this will bring us into our topic for tonight. So keep in mind that while H2 creates antioxidants, ions create the pH changes. So remember that a negatively charged hydroxide ion, or OH negative, makes the water alkaline, and that slightly alkaline water passes through the stomach much faster and it gets to the small intestine quickly, where it's absorbed into the bloodstream and the lymphatic fluid, and that's just the beginning, because we know that on the pH scale, that 7 is neutral, and anything that is below 7 increases in acidity, while anything above 7 increases in alkalinity. And terms that describe strong alkaline water characteristics would be emulsifying. So my tongue's twisted, I guess. An emulsifying agent lowers the surface tension between various substances, and they're added to liquids to stabilize the mixture. And a surfactant also lowers the surface tension and acts to lift dirt and other substances away, while a solvent dissolves and removes particles from other substances. In terms that describe strong acidic water characteristics would be anything from a 6 and down would be a toner, which reduces the size of the pores in your skin, reduces the appearance of wrinkles, tightens skin, and hydrates that epidermis, that outer layer of the skin that lasts only 2 to 4 weeks. You can see why people notice such a big difference in their skin in a short period of time of using beauty water. And as it lowers in pH and gets down in that anywhere from 1.8, which is the same as hydrochloric acid, all the way up to about 2.75, kills all 9 known microbes on contact. And so better health can be achieved in many ways. And remember that the food we eat and the air that we breathe and what we apply to our skin also has a significant impact on our health. And we can enhance our food not only by making some dietary changes, but also the ways we choose to clean it and prepare it. And that's why I've written both of these books, to help you learn how to clean and prepare your food better, and also to give you some really delicious recipes and things. Heather really likes that cookbook. To give you some recipes so that you are making the healthiest food possible, and the recipes do include using ionized water. It also includes the air we breathe, and we can be much healthier if we pay attention to our air quality. And you have to remember that new houses are pretty tightly sealed and will hold a lot of toxins inside, that older homes that have more airflow, whether you like it or not, through leaky windows and doors and things like that, are have a better air exchange, and so they're not quite such storage containers for toxic cleaning products. And most cleaning products, unless you're buying the absolute organic, non-toxic varieties, are pretty toxic. And the airborne microbes like mold can be very lethal. And all of those toxins penetrate the skin. But when we use the steps in your home and chemical-free sanctuary, you can actually eliminate almost every toxic cleaning product that you've ever used by just using a certain pH of water. It is really pretty remarkable how much money you save, how much healthier your house is. And by doing something as simple as just misting the air with 2.5 waters once a day or twice a day, you can eliminate most of the microbes that are floating in your air. So during, now that we're moving into fall, lots of people start getting colds and flu. That's a great way to try to get that under control before it starts. And you can take care of your bodies from head to toe by using ionized water protocols. It took me years to develop all of these, so it's difficult for everyone to remember them. It's good to have a reference guide to go back to. So that's why I wrote these books. So now we're going to go into our topic for tonight, which is how are pH and antioxidants related. So let's just start with simple definitions. So pH stands for the potential for hydrogen, and I'm sure all of you know that. And ORP stands for oxidation reduction potential. So the higher the pH, the greater the potential for a negative ORP reading. And a negative ORP reading equals reduction. The lower the pH, the lower the pH, the lower the potential for, it's actually the higher the potential for a positive reading, which is oxidation. So lower pHs give the potential for more oxidation, where higher pHs produce the greater potential for a reduction in oxidation. So this is really important to remember. So here are the key points that we're going to go through tonight. So oxidation and reduction always happen at exactly the same time because they're a chemical reaction. So one thing is happening while the other thing is happening. It's a simultaneous reaction. And so when you're working with water and electricity, the chemical reduction, which is oxidation reduction, which in scientific terms they call it a redox potential or redox action. So when you're working with water and electricity, the chemical reaction called redox happens. Ionizers separate the reduced water, the negative ORP water, and the oxidized water, the positive ORP water, into two separate streams. So reduction means it's reducing oxidation, while the oxidation means it's increasing oxidation. That one's easy, right? The higher the pH rating of the water, the greater the potential for reduction of oxidation. So when you start at 8, you have a lower potential for the reduction of oxidation. But when you get up to 11.5, you have the highest potential for the reduction of oxidation. That means that as you change, that's happening for a lot of reasons, and I want to explain some of them. The actual setting on your machine doesn't mean you're going to get that exact pH of water. It means all it's indicating is that it's the amount of electricity that's flowing through the water to split it to create more or less hydroxyl ions. So when you set your machine on 8 or 8.5 or 9 or 9.5 or 11.5, it actually changes the amount of electricity that's passing through the machine. So if you want a lower pH, so you want 8 or 8.5, less electricity flows through the plates because you want to split less water and less of those water molecules in order to not have too much hydroxyl ions, OH negative. Because remember, the more OH negative you have in the water, the more alkaline it is. So as you increase the number setting to 9.5, more electricity is flowing. It's using more electricity to the plates. It's delivering more electricity to the plates, which means there's more water being split. So you get more alkaline water. And then as you move up to 11.5, it's going to use its maximum potential of electricity delivered to the plates. So all that happens when you change the plate, the setting numbers, is that a different amount of electricity is flowing through the plates. And the less electricity that's flowing through the plates, the less antioxidant potential and the lower the pH. And the more electricity that's flowing through the plates, the more antioxidant potential and the more alkaline the water. Now, the lower the pH reading of the water, it means that it's got a greater potential for increasing oxidation. Now, remember that our own bodies use oxidation to kill microbes. So a high positive ORP reading water does the same thing to surfaces outside of our bodies. So that's why when we have a cut or we get ill, like it showed in that chart, our bodies send lots of oxidizers to kill the microbes. Same thing, when we're delivering lots of oxidizers to a surface of something, it's going to kill more microbes. So that's the value of the high oxidation potential, is to kill more, oxidizing them. It actually just kind of, it makes the entire virus or bacteria or whatever have that so much oxidation it can't survive. Now, this is why other units fail to produce good results. When pH is achieved from adding minerals, like the machines that have mineral adding cartridges, the ORP readings are simply smoke and mirrors, because the minerals that are dissolving in the water create tiny electrical currents in millivolts, which are read by the ORP meter. The ORP meter is only reading these tiny electrical charges, and it does not distinguish between minerals dissolving in the water and molecules that have split. So it doesn't distinguish between negatively charged hydroxyl ions and minerals dissolving in water, because all it's doing is taking electrical readings in the water. This took me quite a long time to figure out. And I was testing, I can't think of what the name of the machine was, one of the Korean machines. I was testing it one day, and they're really big about, the fact that they add healthy minerals to the water. And I had it hooked up in my old house. I had set it up really perfectly so that I had 2 sinks and used the same waters, had all the same pre-filters on both sinks. But one of them was set up to actually just for my for my Kangen machine, for my SD501. And the other one was my dishwashing, all that kind of sink. And so I had both of the machines on at the same time, and I was taking readings. And when I took the readings from the Korean machine, I had 2 ORP meters. So I had an ORP meter in that glass of water. And what I noticed was that over time, this was going on for about an hour, I saw that ORP, that negative ORP reading continue to rise, while in the enagic water, the ORP reading was dropping. And it took me a bit to figure out that, it's those stupid minerals that they added. And those minerals are dissolving in the water, and that's creating an electrical current. So a true positive ORP reading will drop when it's exposed to air, because a redox action will take place as the oxidizers in the air react with the antioxidants in the water. The antioxidants reduce the oxidizers in the air, and they get used up, so the number drops. Now, in the other water, there was no real redox action happening to the air. There was no reduction of oxidation to the air. All it was doing was creating this electrical current. in the water that had minerals in it, and the more the minerals were changing addresses as they were going from solid to liquid, the higher that negative that positive ORP reading went up. So it like I said, just smoke and mirrors. The chemical reaction that was created when the minerals dissolve created the ORP reading to increase despite the exposure to air. So that's how you can tell whether something is an ORP reading, a positive ORP reading that's actually going to have redox potential in the body, or the ability to reduce oxidation in the body, is if while it's exposed to the air, the number drops, because we know there's lots of oxidizers in our air. And so as the water is exposed to air, the redox potential is happening, the oxidation reduction potential is happening, and so the positive number in the water in the glass will reduce. If it's a fake one, if it's a smoke and mirrors one, it's going to increase over time. Now, here's another tricky thing that happens with these units, that units with inferior plates overheat pretty easily. And so they cycle the electricity off, but they don't tell you that's happening. So you're making water and you have no idea that the water that's coming out of your machine has not been exposed to one bit of electricity. So that means that as the plates get hot, the electricity quits flowing to the plates for a time until they cool off, and then it starts again, and then it stops, and then it starts, and then it stops, but you never know it. That means that only part of the water that's flowing from those ionizers was exposed to any electricity. And if only part of the water was exposed to electricity, then the oxidation reduction potential was interrupted, and neither the acid or the alkaline water streams contain enough oxidizers or enough positively. So your positive charge, you're never going to get enough antioxidant potential or reduction potential, and you're never going to get enough oxidation potential to actually do any real work from in your body or in cleaning or anywhere. So if we educate ourselves about this, then we can educate other people, and that keeps them from throwing their hard-earned money away. This is so discouraging to me when people come to me and say, I have a water ionizer. I met someone just last fall. I was at a holistic fair, and I met some women who said, "Oh my gosh, you're Dr. Peggy Parker. I have all your books." And they actually knew Amanda, and she had talked to them about Enagic, and they had gone with another machine because it was cheaper. And they didn't know that their machine wasn't working until I showed them how to do the testing. And they were so sad because they had gone together to buy a machine and were sharing water between households. And now they knew that they had just basically thrown their money down the sink. Well, that's very discouraging to people. And it also, when a lot of people, like me, when I got that Akai machine, I no longer believed that ionized water had any good potential. I didn't see any good test results in my patients. I didn't see it in myself. I didn't enjoy drinking the water. It was, the reputation of ionized water had gone down the tubes for me and my patients. So when I got really sick and my friend in Seattle kept talking to me about ionized water, I just kept ignoring her. I could have gotten well a lot faster if I had not had an experience from one of these cheap machines. So I think that it's important for us to stay educated and to help educate other people in order to protect the reputation of ionized water. Because as you know, I believe that together we can actually impact the health of people all around the world, one glass of water at a time, one drop of water at a time, one pH of water at a time. We can really change the face of healthcare, because most of us, let's face it, most of us have inadequate health care because our physicians don't understand all the implications of the drugs they prescribe or the food that we eat or the water that we drink. And as we educate ourselves and as we educate other people about the potential positive effects of ionized water and the antioxidants that are contained in it, and the fact that it's more hydrating because the alkaline pH allows it to pass through the stomach faster. It makes such a big difference in the daily lives of people. And as you are impacted, right now, one of my friends in Dallas, who's my exact age, is dying from cancer. And so, and I've had other acquaintances and friends die of cancer and other diseases over the past few years. As you see that happening and you know that there is a better way, it becomes, I feel like it's incumbent upon us to share this information with people. But that's why it's so important, in my opinion, to get really well educated on it so that you know that you're sharing actual facts and real information that people can look up on the internet and find out that it's true so that they truly trust you and believe you. So I would like to now talk about your assignment for this week. Spend some time working on your elevator speech. And there is nothing that we're adding to our elevator speeches, so there's nothing new to add here. So we're just going to pass on down to the questions and, get right into it. I did have one question. I'm just kind of going quickly. Whoops. Shoot. I went too fast and kind of got myself out of, I'll get back to the question and answer things soon enough. But we're going to go, as we're going, we're getting a little picture review. But anyway, as the week went along, I got a couple of questions from people. And one of the questions was, she felt like I didn't answer adequately last week about whether or not pesticides were removed from the surfaces of foods when soaked in 11.5 water. So I want you to think about that real carefully. Remember that food has a surface, food has something on it that doesn't belong there, and the very components of 11.5 water are that it emulsifies, that it's a solvent, and that I did it one more time. So we're just going to pretend like I didn't. Here, I'll just do this. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. Here we go. Now we got it. So as a solvent, as an emulsifier, and as a surfactant, it's going to take the things that are inappropriate and lift it away. It's also going to be taking some of the pigment, and that's why the water changes color, because it's not because of the pesticides or herbicides, but it's because it's taking some of the pigment away. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't remove those things, some of them. It can't remove everything. For instance, a lot of apples have wax on them, and it doesn't remove the wax. That takes a lot more heat and that sort of thing to get rid of the wax on the outside of apples. But as far as a lot of the spray-on pesticides and herbicides, it can lift those off, the oil, especially the oil-based ones. It does not remove the chemicals that have penetrated the surface of the fruit or vegetable. It doesn't take it out of the inside, nor does it take away the pesticides and herbicides, the genetic modification that's on the inside that's creating a resistance to certain bugs. but it is really helpful in removing some of those things. So that was the one question that I don't know what I keep doing tonight, but I seem to be kind of all thumbs when it comes to this tonight. Let's see, I was just trying to get to right there. I did it. So let's say here. So Cynthia says, I have the following two questions that prospective customers have asked me in the past week. What type of calcium is in the water distributed by the Kangen water machine? So it's just whatever form of calcium, which is usually calcium carbonate that's in your water, is ionized, and it just becomes an ionized form of calcium carbonate. And how do we know that the brain is hydrated within? I don't understand that question. Could you please? It says, how do we know that the brain is hydrated within 0.4 of drinking the water? I have no idea what that sentence is. So if you could repost that sentence, that would be great, Cynthia. Debbie asked, H2 drops don't work for water in our area. There aren't enough minerals in our municipal water source. That's not why H2 drops wouldn't work. The H2 drops aren't working for so just tell me which machine you're using and where you are, and that will help. Yeah, and Jupiter is one of them that adds minerals. It always has. And there are several others that are in that category as well. So Debbie says, I'm working with a natural holistic provider using hyperbaric oxygen and saw a tremendous Kangen demo, but decided to go researching. He found Life Ionizer, oh no, and has been severely swayed with its propaganda and deceptive false advertising in comparison to Kangen water. It's been a real education for me to try to help guide this man. I'm not sure if I've won the fight yet. So hopefully some of the things that I told you tonight will be helpful. And that would, if you can get a hold of a Life Ionizer to test, it will be real eye-opening for him when we do that webinar, that testing webinar. So I don't know what you're talking about, Debbie, because we don't know that the brain is hydrated within 4 seconds of drinking water. That doesn't even sound remotely possible. So I don't know where you heard that, but I don't believe that that's true. Does the Enagic enhancer still have a stabilizer? I don't know what you're talking about there either. Are you talking about the enhancing solution that you use to produce 11.5 water? You know, I'm not a distributor, so I don't know some of those answers to those things. Let's see, how can one test tap water not connected to the city? Do you mean like on a well, Katrina? And can tap water just damage the ionizers? Yes, anything that has a lot of calcium will damage an ionizer, and some things that are really high in certain minerals can damage ionizers. Debbie said she lives in Atlanta and she has an SD501. Now, I don't know why you're having trouble with the H2 in Atlanta. I would need to know what your readings were in your negative ORP and that sort of thing from your SD501. Because if you have enough minerals to produce a negative ORP, you have enough minerals because minerals don't really have anything to do. Mineral content of the water doesn't really have much to do with H2 any more than it has to do with creating a negative ORP. So Debbie, what kind of readings are you getting out of your SD501 if your TDS is only 37 in your city water? You couldn't be getting very good readings out of your machine because you really need something over 100. So the Enagic enhancer, is a salt-based solution, but they did used to add sodium, something that was like bleach. a bleach component. That's what people thought, but actually that was just naturally occurring when salt combines with water. You get some sodium chloride and you get some sodium hydroxide and a few other things. So there was never anything added to the water. It's just naturally occurring in that enhancer solution. People made a big deal about it online, the competitors, saying that we were using bleach to make our strong alkaline water. So the good news is this. Remember that when you're the machine that everybody compares themselves to, that means you're the top of the heap. Like you're the gold standard, and they're trying to compete. They just don't do a great job to accomplish that. So Roscoe said, is the water softener the only way to eliminate calcium? So there are other ways that you can reduce minerals, and there's some electronic things that you hook on your water intake from this, from your water lines coming in from the city. But all it does is, what it does is actually change the charge of the calcium. And so once it goes through ionization, it gets sticky again. So the only way that I have found to eliminate calcium is with a water softener. And there are different kinds of water softeners. Some of them, like a long time ago, I don't know if they still have it, but Enagic put out these, like it was a series of three filters, and one of them actually removed some of the calcium. So there are different kinds of pre-filtration that can help remove calcium. Do you have any more questions from anybody? Where our time is just about up. Okay, so Debbie says that she uses a remineralization cartridge, which raises her TDS to just over 100. Okay, so I think we've talked about that for just a little bit, and in the past, Debbie. And so I don't know how your remineralization cartridge works. So it might be that we need to have some kind of a phone consultation on that to see if there's a way to create a bigger release of minerals into your water. So I can see that, she said her 9.5 waters varies from a negative 400, and sometimes it gets up to a 660. But we're just going to need to try to figure out how to get more minerals into your water. There are several cities across the country that have very low mineral content, and it becomes a little more difficult to create really high negative ORP numbers. And she said this before too, that she has if you get a crackle with the flame, you're producing plenty of H2. So because that's what that's all about. If when you're using a lighter or some kind of a flame, and you're making water and you hear it go crackle, 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 and you can kind of see sparks sometimes, that's just H2 igniting. So that means you've got plenty of H2. So I don't know why you're not able to make your H2 drops work. And yes, Robin, that is called a scale blaster. Some of them have different names, but thanks for the reminder. And it does restructure the calcium, but when it goes through ionization, it still sticks to the plates and to your glassware and all of that. I'm hoping that we find some other method of reducing calcium, but so far the best that I've found is by using a water softener, which also adds a little salt to your water, which creates a much higher negative ORP number and a much higher positive ORP number. So Debbie says she can't get a true 2.5 or high. That's because of your the lack of minerals in your water. And you can also slow your water way down. The slower you run your water through your machine, the closer you're going to get to 2, and the closer you're going to get to 12. It will tell you you're running the water too slowly. Don't pay any attention. Just keep doing it, Debbie, and see if that makes a difference for you. And I see that we have hit the magic 8 o'clock hour. And so it's time for us to say goodnight. And wow, next week is week 10. So we're almost at the end. We're going to talk about some really interesting things next week. And the following week and our 12th week is going to be kind of a wrap up. So please send your questions in advance so I can make sure I get them. And we'll just keep moving along. I did send out an email to all of you to let you know that the advanced classes are going to start immediately following the end of this class. And if you would like, these advanced classes are going to be held in a different format. So rather than signing up for like a 12 or a 20-week course like people used to do, I'm breaking it up into modules. So they'll only be like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or, something like that. And it'll be on a specific topic. And so if one topic isn't necessarily that interesting to you, although I think you might find that it is if you took the course, but if it doesn't sound interesting to you, you don't have to sign up for that one. You can just sign up for whatever you want. If you sign up for this first series, it's 4 weeks and it's on the skin. Your skin is your biggest organ. So it's really important to understand how the skin works and how ionized water helps us make that skin work better, that whole organ, and how the skin is related to the rest of your organs in your body and to your immune system and all of that. So if you sign up for that before the end of the month, you get a reduction in price, and that'll always be true. Any class that you sign up for in advance, you're going to get a reduced price. So anyhow, I would visit my site, Ionized Water Info, and sign up as soon as possible and take advantage of that discount. Anyway, I hope everybody has a great week. I'll also be getting back to you with the date and time for the webinar on testing. So everyone have a great night, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.